Hi, this is DC's Q&A Creator Series. My name is Joshua Williamson. I'm the writer of Superman, Batman and Robin, Green Arrow, and Night Terrors. I first got into Superman because of the movies. I think, like a lot of people, that was really my first interaction with Superman was obviously the Christopher Reeve Richard Donner, which is still one of the best interpretations of Superman ever. That was my first real interaction with it, and then you start going from that from the toys. I was really into Superpowers toys from Super Friends and watching cartoons. I didn't start actually buying Superman on the regular until Death of Superman. I think the build up to that, I was still reading DC Comics at the time. I was very young, but I was reading DC Comics at the time. But everybody was reading Death of Superman, and I was so into it. The whole lead into Superman, and then Reign of Superman blew my mind, and that was when but it's also associated when I started reading the comics all the time, was during that time period. So it's my fandom with Superman is also tied into my going to comic shops a lot, actually on a regular basis. Some of my favorite Superman stories, there's the obvious ones like All-Star Superman, Superman Secret Origin. Again, I was a really big fan of everything that happened during Reign of Superman. There's some stuff back during the Silver Age that I was a really big fan of, some stuff in the Bronze Age. I'm mostly a 90s kid though. So Triangle era, that's really my whole brick. I loved the Superman Batman series with Jeff Loeb and McGinnis. Honestly, we don't have time to really tell you every single one that I really liked, but there's a lot that I really love. When I first started taking on the job, I was just really interested in getting him down to I really love the supporting cast, and I really love writing Lex Luthor. With Clark in particular, I just think this idea of this person who is so hopeful and really sees the best in everyone. I was excited about that. I had a little experience with that when I was writing Barry Winkley, but Superman is peak for that. But also, I really love the idea that I think Superman is the kind of person that does not feel like helping people is a burden. And I wanted to write a character that was like that. It was really somebody I felt like they enjoyed being a superhero and enjoyed helping people. That was a big part of going into it. I kept that in mind and was really excited about writing. So for me, with Superman, mostly the 90s stuff with Superman and the Triangle era, really that's the stuff that I really kind of looked at and influenced me the most. And then I go back and look at the stuff that John Byrne had done. Really, I'm like just any book. The answer is kind of all of it. And the reason why I say that is once I know I'm taking on a character, I do a deep dive. And I don't just read the stuff that I love. I go back and I read all the things that I love. I go back and I find things that I haven't read. So in a weird way, all of those things really have influenced the Superman book that I'm doing now. And then one of the biggest influences on the book is obviously the cartoon series. That was the tone we were kind of going for from the start. But then I just was what do I really love about this character? And that was the biggest influence. Whenever I'm writing the part that I really am the most excited when it happens is actually when the roughs come in. When I'm writing, I have a long process between, I do a lot of notebook work. I really craft a book usually on a whiteboard or in a notebook before I actually type it. The actual typing process is not very long. It's maybe 2 days of actually typing. But a lot of the actual writing is done in my notebook, it's done on whiteboard, it's done with me taking long walks. All of that, it's all still kind of in my head. It's not real yet. It's not a comic yet. Until I start seeing the roughs come in. And then at that point, the artist is taking all those ideas and turning them into a comic. It's really the first step, if not, it's the first step of starts becoming a comic. And that's my favorite part. When I see that stuff coming in, I just love it. That's my favorite stage. So it all starts with the notebook. Everything is just me jotting ideas and thoughts. Because I don't know if I have I don't have an ABC process. It isn't I start here and go to this. It isn't uniform. It can be a different thing, but at the end of the day, I write everything down in notebooks. So It could be me having a conversation with another creator or with the artist in the book or the editors, like talking about ideas and that process of then like, oh, about this, like there's something I'm thinking about for Superman next year. And that literally came from me just walking around the house in the morning at like 6 a.m, getting coffee ready. And all of a sudden I was like, oh, what if I did this? And then I ran to my office, I wrote down the notebook. And then an hour later, actually it was more than that, it was like 3 hours later, I pitched to the editor. And I said, here's what I'm thinking about doing. And then we started talking about it, and then I started typing it. When it actually comes to like scripting, it's very much just like, I think about what the issue's gonna look like. Like I'm a very visual person, and I feel like I have to see the comic before I write. Like I have to feel like I'm reading it before I start writing it. Once I get that, where I can see the beginning and middle and end, most of the beginning and the end. Once I start seeing all those pieces, then it's just about pulling all the stuff together. I don't have like a uniform every day. I sit down, page 1. At the end of the week, I'm done writing page 22. It's not like that. I bounce around by scenes, by, sometimes I'll write the ending first because sometimes the ending can be the easiest thing to write, So I bounce around through different processes, but I would say I do a lot of work before I do this. It is all in my head. I've been reading comics my entire life, and I've been reading multiple books my entire life, and I've seen how it's interesting as a reader. I can see the math across the different books and the pieces how they come together. When I'm writing the books, I just can't keep track of it that way. And again, don't get me wrong, I have notebooks and documents. Like when we're doing events, I write out a lot of stuff, and I do a lot of whiteboards. And there's a lot of like, this is going to connect to this, this is connected to this, But at the end of the day, a lot of it is just in my head. Like it's just up there, moving around, and so it's like I just look at a calendar sometimes. It sounds really silly, but I can see like, okay, well I'm doing this in this book that month. I can do this in that same month. I can find those ways of making that connective tissue. If it's other books that I'm not writing, I just talk to those creators. We talk about the same thing. Like I'm doing this month. Like, okay, cool, I'm doing this month. And we start talking about it. But honestly, like, and again, it's notebook work, whiteboards, but honestly, it's locked up in there. With the power stuff, I definitely think you should check out what Philip K. Johnson is doing over in Action Comics. Like, he's doing a lot of stuff with Superman's powers. The stuff that I do, I mostly focus on the characters and what's going on there, kind of part of the story. When it comes to the powers, it depends on who their villain is, right? Like, and I definitely think about this, with Superman in particular, he would never hurt me though, right? So it's always about how does Superman stop them without hurting them? But he definitely has this like huge gauntlet of superpowers. So I try to definitely find some creative ways without the intellectual spoilers for him to use it. But if you're definitely the type of person that is like, you want to see this power used on like crazy scale, definitely check out Action Comics. That's hard. That's a really hard question because I think one of the biggest challenges we have in making the world a better place is oftentimes people who have different points of view of how the world is a better place. And I think for Superman and Clark, I think that's a big piece of this is other people, right? Like he sees the best in everyone, and I think he has this sensation of everyone is capable of good. And so I think with that is still probably his biggest challenge is how to work with people to help them become that. But it's like he doesn't want to do it for them. And I think that's part of it. It's like he doesn't want to do it for them. With the book, one of my main goals was I wanted to play with all of Superman's villains and all of the toys, right? And so like the Tallow is in Action Comics, but I have some ideas from Tallow I want to keep online. Parasite is a character I always love. He's in the first 3 issues, and he also plays this is a bit of a spoiler, but he plays a supporting role after that. Mxyzptlk is always tough. I think Mxyzptlk is probably the hardest character to write for Clark. I've written him once before. I think he's one of the bigger challenges. But with this book, I think I wanted to use all of the iconic villains for Superman. If there is a villain for Superman out there, I definitely have him on the list, and I think one of the things I did when I took on the project was I made a list of every single Superman villain and just notes next to their name, different thoughts and different things I would think about with them. And so, yeah, I mean, if you're a fan of sort of the iconic Superman villains, I definitely have a plan for them. Oh, yeah, for sure. I definitely want to not only take some of the iconic villains and shine like a different new light on them and use their powers maybe differently than we've seen before. Like in the first 3 issues, we tweak how Parasite's powers work a little bit. But there'll definitely be some curveball. There's some things in there that I think we would be surprised by that we're using. And there might be some stuff that we use in a way we've never seen before. I think for me, one of the biggest differences between my Superman and other versions of Superman is that it's my Superman. And that's actually part of what my pitch was on the book, was looking at Superman through Lex Luthor's point of view and saying, like, Lex Luthor is the one that looks at Superman and thinks, like, how do I fix this? How do I improve upon this? And so I was using basically Lex's point of view on Superman and do something different with the character. And I think that's part of what I'm trying to bring to the table, different from what else has done before. Taking on Superman was incredibly intimidating. I do feel great knowing I have a team of people, the editors at DC, and John Campbell, and the artists that come on it. I have a lot of faith, a lot of trust in them, but it definitely was one of the more intimidating books I've ever worked on. But in that intimidation, I actually found freedom because I was able to let go of some things that I was worried about. It's like once I recognized I was being intimidated by it actually, looking at everything and being like, I knew what I wanted to do with the character, and I knew it was going to be something different. I found that intimidation actually ended up being really free and ended up really helping me out. And it definitely did impact the kind of stories I was going to tell online, because I knew I was going to do something different with the book. And I knew my priority was, like, I want to honor the mythology of what's come before, but do something new and different with it and move the ball down the line, really do something new with the character. But so actually that intimidation ended up being one of the best things that happened in the book. So for me, I went back and looked at kind of everything. I went back and I looked through a lot of different interpretations of Clark, because I actually think that Clark is fairly consistent across most. I think one of the best ways to do Superman is you just write Superman. Like, I think you all have an idea of what Superman should be and can be. And I think the key to writing Superman is to just write Superman as Superman, write Clark as Clark, but then you put him in new situations, right? You put him in new areas. And that's how I feel like some of the past stuff really influenced the book, was that I just looked at all these pieces and I was like, I think one of the most interesting things about Superman is putting him in different situations and watching how he reacts to those situations. But as long as Superman stays as Superman. And so, yeah, I went back and I looked at, again, the cartoon, looked at the movie, but then with the comics, I kind of looked at everything. And I looked at some of my favorite Superman stories, and that was one of the things I noticed in the pattern, was just kind of keeping Clark consistent across really helped. That's a tough question without getting into spoilers. I feel like there's a lot of characters that might surprise you that are going to be coming into this book. I definitely like to do deep dives into older DC history and find characters that might surprise you. I definitely would say the real big bad of the book is actually a character you know, and you've seen in things, but I think it will really surprise people when they realize that's the actual big bad of the whole book. But there's other stuff I would love to do more stuff. Like, I'm writing Batman, Robin, and Green Arrow, and I would have crossovers. But there is one character who, in the very beginning, I was like, oh, I actually want to do at least one issue with this character that Superman actually already has a history with, and now we're gonna do that, but we're actually gonna do a bigger story out of it. So yeah, there's one character I was like, at the very beginning, I want to have that character show up and now we're going to do it. So I can't tell you what stuff, but it's really exciting. That was a major part of it, because Lex Luthor, that's part of what he wants, is he wants to kind of see his point of view, and so he's going to keep pushing that on him. But at the same time, I think that Superman is taking kind of a leap of faith in Lex and trying to believe that Lex actually is telling the truth this time, that he wants to do something good. So it's kind of this kind of push and pull, but that is definitely part of what Lex wants, and he wants Superman to see things from his point of view. That'll play an important role. I'm really glad to see that somebody actually picked up on that. That I always kind of sneak this idea that Red and Ravage, Jason and Rose kind of have this like secret flirtation, this like thing. I don't think they've defined it, so I'm not going to define it either. But I've always kind of felt like they had sort of a thing. I'm glad to see somebody picked up on that in the work, because I always put it in there. I know that was something in movie too as well. But for me, it's actually a relationship that, for whatever reason, makes a lot of sense to me. And I would love to see them actually do more with that relationship down the line. It's not a secret. People at DC know how I feel about this. So I do think that at some point, if I was in a position to write both characters, we would definitely see more of it. And anyone working on those characters, I definitely poke them about that and know that that's a thing. I think it just comes out of his heart. I think that with Superman, as I've been working on the book, I started realizing that I feel like it's actually kind of easy to get Superman right, but it's also easy to get wrong. And part of the trick is you have to sort of walk this line of making sure you're writing core Superman being Superman, but you don't want to just kind of always fall back on the same old tricks, the same old story. You have to modernize it. And I think that's, again, put him in new situations to sort of do that. Like, at the end of the day, it's just that heart, because if you're missing that heart, the rest of it doesn't work. It doesn't work if you don't have his heart. And I think that is the number one attribute you have to maintain, no matter what time period you're writing Superman, or today, tomorrow, whatever. It's like you have to keep that. Yes. I feel like a lot of stuff that was in the Robin series before will definitely migrate to Batman and Robin. I definitely want to establish what Batman and Robin is in the series first, and how it's about them father and son, before I start bringing in other elements to the book. So the first arc is very much about them and their relationship now with them, living with each other again, father and son again. But then once we get going, then I will definitely start putting more stuff on that. You'll definitely see some of the characters from that series begin. This is a difficult question in some ways, because in my mind it's hard to gauge what is not a big name. There's characters that I might love that no one has ever heard of before, or may not be considered not a big name, but I really love Deadman. Deadman's a character I really love. We're doing a little bit of stuff with him in Night Terrors, and we're definitely expanding on his mythology there. I would say that's one character that I would love to write more of. When I started working on Superman, I started thinking about different aspects of Superman. And one of them was about his powers coming from the sun. And I started thinking a lot about his powers and the sun. I was doing the farm, Metropolis, just thinking about different pieces of Superman mythology that are crucial. And I started about the sun, and I started about Metropolis, because, whenever we're in Metropolis, it's always during the day. It'd be interesting to see a little bit more of the nightlife. And then I was like, the moon, the light from the moon is actually a reflection of the light from the sun. And we never really explored that idea, how that could impact him. So I started thinking, what if there's a character that only really shows up at night in Metropolis? And I went to Jamal, and this is very early on in the process. I went to Jamal, and I was like, here's what I'm thinking. And Jamal got it, really. And then started designing the character, and then we started talking about having having this past that connects to kind of the Western mythology of Metropolis, early stages, or like days of Metropolis. But it'll definitely be a slow burn. Like, it's definitely gonna be something we're gonna see over time, and you'll see bits and pieces of this mythology building and how it connects to the bigger picture of the storytelling. Whenever I approach any character at DC Comics, I always look at how can I add to the right? So regardless of, TV shows or movies, toys, don't get me wrong, I love all those things, and it's cool to see those things move from this to that. Like, I love it, especially the toys. But for me, when I'm working on it, I just really want to add the character, and I think that's how you kind of lasting impression. But for me, I guess I don't really think about that as much. I'm not doing this because I'm like, I want this to, leave it forever, right? I mean, don't get me wrong, that stuff is cool. It's also part of the fun to work on these books. But my goal is always just to add the mythology and tell the best story possible, And I think with this book, doing the same thing of like taking all the things I love, the mythology, the iconic parts of it, and just taking it and then building, like adding to it. And I've always felt this way about DC in general, that DC is at its best when it's adding to the mythology. Like, and that's my own fandom for DC. Like, I feel very lucky that I came to DC at a time where they were always adding stuff to it. They're adding to the mythology. And so I just try to do the same thing. That's what I know what I love about DC Comics is adding to the mythology. And so that's what I try to do here. And that's my hope with Superman, is that the things that I add, add something to the character and the mythology. This is a funny question to me, because the idea of it not worrying about selling or not worrying about canceling, I mean, honestly, I wish I could say that about every book I work on. I wish I didn't worry about those things. No matter what, I always worry about it. But, I can make joke answers. Like, I would love to write a Bloodlines book that touched on the old Bloodlines event. I would love to do a book that took place all in the Bronze Age of comics. I think it's a very interesting time period. But if there was a character I could work on and I would never worry about it ever being canceled, that is a hard question. I feel like it's like I'll start digging in. I feel like I'm very lucky that I've gotten to write a lot of my favorite characters. I've got to write. I got to write Superman. I got to write Batman. I got to write Robin. I got to write Flash. I think that for the most part, if I had to worry about it not being canceled, I don't want to give it away because I feel like I'll eventually get to write it. So I don't want to necessarily give it away, but I think it'd be fun to kind of do. I mean, honestly, I think one of the main things I would really like to do is actually a history of the DC universe. So it's not a character so much as a new history of the DC universe. I think that would be really fun. If I didn't have to worry about trying to make it thematically exciting, I guess, to make sure it always had stuff that would sell. And I could just tell a history book, basically, I would enjoy that. I think it would be fun. Yeah, I definitely wanted to show more Clark. I wanted to show more Clark. I wanted to show more Clark and Lois, and I wanted to show more Daily Planet. And I want to see this. I think that Clark is a very human character. I think too many people believe that this alien. And don't get me wrong, I think he feels like an outsider. But feeling like an outsider is very human. And so I wanted to give him more traits. Like, I wanted to be like, this is a person who is not Superman 24/7. He's not that character. That's why in the first issue, I showed him listening to music. A very human thing that everyone does. And so I'm trying to find more places to do that. Find a place like let Clark and Lois go on a date. Let them have a relationship that is more than just their jobs. So yeah, I will definitely see a lot more of that. yeah, I think that for a while there, it felt like a lot of Superman's villains, and even Lex, were mad scientists. And you go back and look at like the old Max Fleischer cartoon, and that first one was Lex, the mad scientist. I've always found that side of Superman to be fascinating, to be like mad scientists are his villains. I know it's very like Golden Age, Silver Age thing, but I think they're fun. I think for a while we got into this thing post Doomsday where it was like every villain had to meet him on a physical level. And but when you think about Lex and Brainiac and Good Soul Clay, those are all villains that aren't about his strength or his powers. It's about his humanity, his heart, but also his mind. Superman is a very smart person. So I was thinking about that, and I was like, we haven't seen in a while straight up mad scientists. And yeah, they're all brand new mad scientists. I thought about Inner Gang. That definitely was something I thought about, but I've done so much with Darkseid already that I was, I actually want to do something different with this. And it all started with this idea about Lex Luthor. And, Lex Luthor was in Metropolis for a long time before Superman got there. Like, they both left Smallville at different times. They both left Smallville. Lex came to Metropolis, and then Superman traveled the world. But Lex was there. And what we're revealing is there were already supervillains in Metropolis when Lex got there. And he's basically the one who took them out. He's the one who took them out. But, it's because it's Lex. It's never that easy. And so there's a bigger story there, and I wanted to explore that. And so a lot of these new villains that are coming, and I say this in the first issue, like Lex says, you're not fighting your villain, you're fighting my villains. And so I wanted to be that we're looking at all these villains. They all are aspects of Lex, and they play off of Lex's stuff more so than Superman's. But yeah, I'm glad to see that people are enjoying the idea of it being Superman versus mad scientists again. Because at the end of the day, I want the book to be fun, and I find mad scientists to be incredibly fun. Well, thank you so much for all these questions. It was a lot of fun. I really appreciate everyone coming on with so many awesome questions. I wish we could have got to all of them, but again, I really, really appreciate you taking the time to ask all those questions. Right now, pick up Superman #3 came out, and this week Green Arrow #1 comes out, so I hope you've been picking that up. And then also, I want to say congratulations to Ninja Stoops. You get a signed copy of Superman #1. I hope you enjoy it. Thank you so much again for your questions.